Everybody.
Okay, hello. So, I am not John Dennehy. My name is Ryan McFarlane. I'm here today with my wife. Now, my wife and I, we moved here from Canada in July. That was about 5 months ago now. And the reason for that move was somewhat traumatic. My wife and I, we were among the sizable number of Canadians whose bank accounts were frozen back in February. And even though that was a short-term measure that was levied against us, as the Prime Minister turned our financial system into a weapon against the working class, our faith in the Canadian political and financial system was shattered forever. And it compelled us to rethink what we wanted to do with our marriage and where we were going to go next. Now, my wife, just a year before that, had said, "What about Bitcoin?" as an answer to inflation. And it turned out that that question would heave us aboard an ark that would take us to this El Salvador, the new world, where there's a form of money that is sovereign and that no one can freeze, no one can confiscate, no one can take from you. So we landed here in July, and that's how I and my wife met John Dennehy. Now, this is a special person I'm talking about here, because if you want to change the world, if you want to bring a generation forward that can really change the way we're doing things in this world, then you have to lead with your heart. Now, when my wife and I got married and we decided to move to El Salvador, we led with our hearts in that. And we envisioned two futures, one where anybody, anytime can have their economic life shut down, or one where individuals from a young age, as children, can adopt the tools and the technology to prevent that from ever happening. And when we met John, he quickly, in the course of our discussions, made it clear to us that he had also envisioned these two futures and that he was leading with his heart to make sure the better one is the one that's realized. So I approached John a couple of weeks before the conference here, and I said, "Hey, John, I'd like to introduce the audience at Adopting Bitcoin to the man that I met. And so if you'll join me in these 6 minutes of video, I'd be grateful. Thank you." Please bear with us. I think Klaus Schwab might have hacked into my computer.
Chinese last month unveiled the world's first digital currency from a major power. Is the Fed working on a digital dollar?
We are actually evaluating that. Most major countries are now looking at the possibility.
In the fiat world, we live for others, but we don't live selflessly. We live for others in the sense that our life is dedicated to the status quo. The more centralized a society becomes, the more an individual feels powerless. And with that comes frustration, comes anger. It causes people to lash out. The best way to predict the future is to create it. We need to ensure that we live in a world which diverts from this path. We need to change course, and we need to do it today. In the fiat world, we live for others selfishly. In the Bitcoin world, we could live for ourselves selflessly. We can argue that there has never been a successful revolution in human history. Because in every revolution previous to this one, what we have always fought over is who is in control, who has power. This is a revolution not to change who wields power, but to change how power is wielded.
you, Ryan. Thank you, Jessica. So that's a great way. I want to come back to this later, but I think I want to address it now, that Meet Premier Bitcoin has had the success that it's had because of people like Ryan and Jessica and everyone else in the room here today that have taken the initiative, have really put the work in, right? I am a spokesperson right now. I'm just delivering a message, but the real work is done by Ryan, Jessica, and so many other people here today. So I want to tell you a little bit about Meet Premier Bitcoin, or my first Bitcoin. But I mostly want to tell you why I think we could change the world, and why I think we must. I'm from New York, and was there when the pandemic hit in 2020. It was wild and crazy and terrible and awful. I spent a lot of time on long walks thinking about the world, and it seemed as clear as ever that there was something fundamentally broken. We live in a world which rewards the wrong people and limits our human potential. A world in which the few decide for the many, a world in which we'd never have to think about the future consequences of our actions. We live in a world in which we are not in control. Power begets power, and as we trend ever deeper towards centralization, there are profound consequences. We are told what is best for us. We are told we are not responsible. We are told we are not capable. They act as chains that limit us, that make us lazy and subservient, and it leaves us feeling empty. It deprives us of purpose. We are expected to just accept whatever power dictates. They print numbers on paper and tell us how much it's worth. I had lived in Ecuador for 5 years previously, and with the pandemic still going, I moved back there to start 2021 and continued my long walks, but with new scenery. Compared to New York, Ecuador needed Bitcoin more. Yet, while I had plenty of friends in New York who had bought some, I didn't know anyone in Ecuador who had. We have a chance to reimagine the world and the distribution of power, so it would be a massive missed opportunity if in the world that emerges, places like New York dominate places like Ecuador. A picture started to emerge on these long walks. In a world gone mad, Bitcoin is sanity. It is a path towards something better. We are speeding towards a cliff, and Bitcoin is our best chance to build wings. I know there are some that think that Bitcoin will win and all we have to do is sit back and watch. No. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Bitcoin is hope because it represents the possibility of a new world. But if we are not careful and active, then that giant legacy world will spread its viruses to the emerging one. And I think this attitude that someone else will do it is a manifestation of that. Someone else will do it is fiat. Bitcoin allows us to be the creators of our destiny, but if we choose to sit back and wait for someone else to do it, then we're repeating the same mistakes we should be replacing. As Bitcoiners, we cannot wait for anyone else. We need to do it ourselves. Personal responsibility, self-sovereignty, and decentralization cannot just be buzzwords. We need to live it, all of us, every day. My first Bitcoin is focused on educating people new to the space because that is the most strategic way to ensure that we take advantage of this incredible opportunity. The real goal isn't to teach people about Bitcoin. It's to allow people to think for themselves. Bitcoin is not the end goal. Education is not the end goal. They are both just tools in this journey to reimagine what's possible. And I think it's worth restating that. Bitcoin is a tool. We care about Bitcoin for its possibility to create something better, right? For us to think for ourselves. But that's hard. That's really, really hard. The legacy world still holds a lot of gravity, even in this space. The easiest way to grow my first Bitcoin would be to take money that comes with strings and to dictate to students what is right and wrong, which products are good, which are bad. That is the path of least resistance. What we do instead is we say no to money if it comes with too many strings, and we try our best to present impartial information so that the students themselves decide what is best. That's hard to do, and we are still figuring things out, but we need to forge a new path, a more difficult one. It would be so easy to go off course and to tell students rather than empower them to decide. It may seem a subtle difference, but it's not. It's the difference between driving off a cliff and learning how to fly. Bitcoin education has to be impartial. However difficult, this is a line that we must hold. The very purpose of all of this is to reimagine a world in which individuals are empowered to make their own decisions. So it wouldn't just be counterproductive to dictate to students, it would be counter-revolutionary. I would rather fail at trying to change the world than succeed at conforming to it. We are not here to entrench the status quo, we are here to overthrow it. The mission is to make ourselves irrelevant. That's easier said than done because power corrupts, but that's why how we educate is so important. The goal is to create a base of people who have realized their self-sovereignty. It should be difficult for any outside force to control them, and that includes us and every other Bitcoin project. We are not a business, we are a movement. This is not about profit, this is about revolution. We have a chance not just to change who wields power, but challenge our relationship to power. We can build a world in which we have agency in our own lives. We can build a world with an incentive system that rewards work and encourages cooperation. One of my favorite things to say about the project is, everything will change but the mission. That's not just a slogan for our meetings. As a new project with bold ambitions, we make a lot of mistakes and then we correct them and change. We're a little short on time, so I'm going to skip the mission statement because this is all basically a mission statement. I was going to read that, but it's on our website. You could find it there. In early 2021, I connected with a Colombian who wanted to teach his community about Bitcoin. I sent him some sats. He taught his community. I tried to teach people in Ecuador, but there wasn't a lot of traction. A couple of classes, but not a lot of traction, not a lot of interest. The pandemic was still going on. And then El Salvador happened. President Bukele announced that they would make Bitcoin legal tender, which is huge. I know that we're all here today because we realize the importance of what's happening here in El Salvador, but I think it's really hard to overstate how important what's happening here in El Salvador is. The first class that we had, one person came. Things picked up. By 2021, we had 400 students total. By the end of this year, we'll have over 10,000 students. So the core idea of everything is to get Salvadorians off of zero. We do this by making the classes interactive and practical. We always start with some basic financial literacy and also have each student use Bitcoin during the class, which they keep at the end. So I see that we're short on time here, and there's somebody that I want to introduce before we go. So I'm just gonna talk for 2 minutes. I think that this is the most important place in the world right now because this is the first nation in the world to adopt Bitcoin. And as such, whatever happens here will create precedents, will set an example. And it's so important that it's the right example. I believe that the foundation for that example being positive will be impartial, independent Bitcoin education. If we could do it right here, then everywhere else will follow. And I am so inspired. I'm so inspired to work with the people that I work with, to have the support of all the people here. I know it sounds crazy, but we can change the world. This is an extremely rare opportunity. This is a small country. We can make a difference. We could put our thumb on the scale here, and if we make a change here, that will echo around the world. So as much as we've already accomplished, we need to do so much more. It's a privilege to be on this stage, but that is only because the project has attracted an extremely talented and dedicated team who just poured themselves into this mission. They've stepped out of their comfort zone and chosen to take the path of most resistance, and it's an honor to work with them. Next year, we could reach 500,000 students, but not on our own. We need you. We need your money, we need your expertise, we need your heart. We need lawyers and teachers and accountants. We need graphic designers and web developers and managers. We need an army of people united by the mission that independent, impartial Bitcoin education will change the world. We need you. Everything will change but the mission. And now, I'm done. And now I wanna invite everyone to, we're having a fundraiser tomorrow night in Tunco. It will be at La Bonita, and the goal is to fundraise for 100 students for the Bitcoin diploma in the next term. Okay, I think we're running out of time, but go to our booth and check out the numbers. The growth is amazing, and it's because of these guys. And I wanna introduce the future, right? One of our students, Danielle, he was a student in Ataco. He graduated 10 weeks ago from the Bitcoin diploma. He graduated high school this month. Next year, in January, he will return to his high school in Ataco as a Bitcoin teacher for us, and he will teach all his peers at the high school that he just graduated from. So that's that. I'll let him say a few words. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Danielle.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Daniel Viana, tengo 18 años y vivo en Concepción de Ataco, en el departamento de Aguachapán. Soy graduado de la primera generación del diplomado en Bitcoin y actualmente me estoy capacitando para ser yo quien imparte este mismo curso en Concepción de Ataco, buscando que los jóvenes tengan una oportunidad para aprender sobre cómo funciona Bitcoin y sobre cómo la sociedad va avanzando con la economía. He preparado unas palabras que les voy a decir en este momento. Y pues yo he vivido una experiencia muy genial con mi primer Bitcoin. Y al igual que todos, estoy buscando que las personas puedan comprender de mejor manera Bitcoin. Y es que Bitcoin me ha traído muchas oportunidades, ya que desde que inicié y terminé el diplomado he aprendido mucho. He conocido personas y a mi edad es una gran oportunidad tener esta educación, ya que me ha dado nueva visión que deseo impartir a las personas y para que ellos reciban esta educación, para que aparte de ese certificado en educación financiera sobre Bitcoin, también tengan las oportunidades que yo he podido tener. Para mí, Bitcoin significa desarrollo, ya que nos permite adaptarnos a la forma en la que vivimos hoy en día. Cuando en El Salvador se comenzó a usar Bitcoin, yo no tenía una idea de cómo funcionaba. Solamente veía que decían que era una forma de pago y bueno, y ahora, después de recibir yo el diplomado, pude comprender muchas cosas, no solo sobre Bitcoin, sino también sobre cómo manejarlo. Tengo la certeza que la población tiene el entusiasmo y las ganas de adquirir este conocimiento. Así poder alcanzar oportunidades, conocimientos y que permitan el desarrollo personal y la superación personal en ellos mismos. Gracias.